Hi everyone, checking in with you for this week's Midweek Devotional. The Psalms deal with how our heart works, the deep recesses of our soul. As I mentioned last week, it's a way to deal with our feelings. Instead of denying them or being controlled by them, we can pray them. We trust God enough to tell Him how we really feel. We trust God enough to be vulnerable. We can come to God with raw, unfiltered emotions. The psalmists are processing their feelings in the presence of God. And today, we're going to be looking at doubt. It's a condition of the soul. And so how do we handle our doubts? Well, today we're going to look at Psalm 73. It's a psalm of Asaph. It's a long psalm, so I'm only going to read a few select verses. So let's look at Psalm 73. Verse 1 says, "Surely God is good to Israel, to those who are pure in heart. But as for me, my feet had almost slipped. I had nearly lost my foothold. For I envied the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. They have no struggles. Their bodies are healthy and strong. They are free from common human burdens. They are not plagued by human ills." Verse 12, "This is what the wicked are like, always free of care. They go on amassing wealth. Surely in vain I have kept my heart pure and have washed my hands in innocence. All day long I have been afflicted, and every morning brings new punishments." Verse 16, "When I tried to understand all this, it troubled me deeply, till I entered the sanctuary of God. Then I understood their final destiny. Surely you place them on slippery ground. You cast them down to ruin. Yet I'm always with you." Verse 23, "You hold me by my right hand. You guide me with your counsel, and afterward you take me into glory. Whom have I in heaven but you? And earth has nothing I desire besides you. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever." So here's a person struggling with doubt. Asaph is saying, I've obeyed God, and this is what I get? So how do we deal with doubt? Let's start with verses 1 and 2. He says, "Surely God is good to Israel, to those who are pure in heart. But as for me, my feet had almost slipped. I had nearly lost my foothold." You worry about losing your foothold when you're climbing a mountain. Notice he almost slipped. The image is if you lose your footing, then you're going to fall off the cliff. It's an image that he almost lost his faith. Doubts can happen to anybody. Even faithful Christians can struggle with doubts. Doubts can cause us to explore and question, which leads to discovering and experiencing things that can actually strengthen our faith and our confidence. Before we come to certainty, we start with doubts and then investigate to discover answers to our questions. So what caused this psalmist's doubt? Look at verse 3. "For I envied the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked." There's amazing honesty here. He envies the arrogant. Now, interestingly, if his life was going well, he would not have bothered to notice. His doubts are rooted in his envy that others are doing better than he is. And the key word here is "I saw." Many things can cause doubt. Something comes in and creates doubt. In this case, he sees injustice. You see people live good, honest lives, and their life is difficult. And then you see people live dishonestly and unjustly, and everything seems to be going great for them. How unfair! How can this be? The Apostle Paul says, "Walk by faith, not by sight." He does not say, "Walk by faith, not by reason." Tim Keller puts it this way: doubts come when personal experience makes what your mind knows unreal to your heart. Let me say that again. Doubts come when personal experience makes what your mind knows unreal to your heart. Faith is not holding on to something in spite of the evidence. Faith is holding on to something in spite of appearances. When we experience suffering, we can doubt what we believe to be true. Faith does not mean we ignore evidence. Doubt is when we have a hard time believing the evidence. So what is the cure? Well, verse 16 and 17 says, "When I tried to understand this, it troubled me deeply, till I entered the sanctuary of God. Then I understood their final destiny." What did he do? He went in the sanctuary. It doesn't mean he simply entered a building. What he did was he entered into worship. He approached God. He prayed. He went to God. And then look at the next verse, verse 18. Surely you place them on slippery ground, you cast them down to ruin. He compares putting his faith in something to putting your foot on something. It's an act of faith that the rock you're stepping on is going to support you. He then recognizes that the wicked are on slippery ground. It takes faith to believe in God, but it also takes faith to disbelieve God. To refuse to trust God takes faith to reject all the evidence God has given you to believe that He is there. The bottom line is you're putting your faith in something. If not God, then something else. We are putting our foot on something. We may feel that we are on shaky ground, but the psalmist sees that the arrogant are even more slippery ground. And then we see in verses 23 and 24, says, "Yet I am always with you. You hold me by my right hand. You guide me with your counsel, and afterward you will take me into glory." With all his doubts, the psalmist nevertheless realizes that God has been holding on to him through all of his doubts. Doubt is when we do not feel that God is there. So how can we be sure that God is there for us? We look to the gospel. Jesus was let go by God. His foot did not slip. He did suffer and die. He was forsaken by God. He did that so that would never happen to us. Jesus took care of the one thing that would keep us from God, the sin that separates us. And Christ removed that with his death on the cross so that we can know that God will never let us go. So know that the Lord will never leave us or forsake us, even in our doubts.